Jinhsi, Jinhsi, Jinhsi. Jinhsi's rerun is here. To this day, she's still held her position strong as a powerhouse DPS. Let's quickly talk about what makes her good, and look at some updated teams and calculations surrounding her. For a general guide for how she works, please check out my previous Jinhsi guide video, link in the description. When looking at strictly theoretical DPS numbers, Jinhsi's DPS over an entire fight doesn't actually pull higher numbers than other meta teams. So, why does she feel powerful? It boils down to two themes: ease of DPS and a heavy weight on burst damage. Because of how her incandescent stacking works, even if you skill issue, roll on the floor, and otherwise aren't doing damage, there's a decent amount of inefficiency that can go into her rotation with minimal damage loss, as you are compensated by the additional stacks. Even if you aren't skill issuing, dodging, parrying, or stunning the boss are all phenomena that slow down the rotation, and cannot be accounted for in theory. Hey, still with me? Crit fishing is also a prevalent part of what makes her feel strong, especially for those going for speedruns or first-time 3-star clears. Several attempts will inevitably be made, and when most of Jinhsi's damage is concentrated into her epiphany, and to a lesser extent her 2-hit liberation, abnormal crit RNG can lead to a much higher DPS ceiling than normal teams. Here are two histograms of damage simulations of Jinhsi's damage distribution across an opener and loop versus that of Encore. Here, there are 100,000 trials to simulate the damage distribution with 70% crit. As you can see, Encore's is more or less a smooth bell curve, as her damage is broken up into several little hits, and as such, evens out much better. But for Jinhsi, there are very noticeable peaks, formed for those rotations that crit the epiphanies. While this red line denotes the median value for Jinhsi, if you reset for the one run where you land 4 from 4 epiphany crits, you would be on the second peak over here. Resetting that many times on Encore or other non-burst oriented characters, you would have a much smaller increase. Now let's take a look at what's changed with teams. Jinhsi herself hasn't seen any new changes in echo options. However, she has several new teammates, and existing ones received new options. The Empyrean Anthem set is an around-the-board increase, assuming adequately geared sub DPS. Yes, there is even a use case where if you have a Yuan Wu geared out the wazoo, it can be a DPS gain to have him on a Defense Gauntlet and Empyrean set, while still having your support on Moonlit. Though this use case is very niche, as the point of Yuan Wu is generally to have a budget, no-investment character. The other new variable to the equation is the Shorekeeper. While she leads to around a 5 to 10% DPS gain in other teams nearly globally, Verina's coordinated attacks hold value in generating incandescent stacks for Jinhsi. With updated calculation parameters, here are how various Jinhsi teams compare. While Jojo is her strongest teammate, Yanlin is not too far behind. Yuan Wu is a decent support that doesn't require any investment, and non-coordinated attackers such as Lumi and Taochi are not that effective in the long run, as Verina by herself isn't enough to generate enough stacks. Overall, the total team DPS is a notch below the recent meta teams such as Camellia with Rosha or Sanhua, Carlotta with Jojo or even Lumi, and even Encore Sanhua Shorekeeper. But remember what we talked about earlier regarding crit fishing and ease of DPS. While the raw theoretical numbers may feel low, they can turn out much higher in practice. On top of that, she doesn't need the Shorekeeper and Stellar Symphony combo that the other teams do, making her a more budget-friendly character, especially for newer players. On the topic of updated calculations, let's revisit this graph of echo builds, taking into account lower subset assumptions. Here are 3 lines representing 3 different builds. 43311 with double spectral, 43311 with 1 spectral and 1 attack, and 44111. The builds all start out pretty close to each other, with spectral and attack being preferable between S0 and S3 inclusive. After S4, 44111 pulls ahead, expanding the gap ever so slightly at higher sequences. And that's all for this revisit. I wanted to throw together this quick video to talk about why Jinhsi is so powerful, and how her numbers have held up to the meta to this day. But unfortunately, she has been powercraft by herself with a pink $30 skin. Hey, if this isn't power creep, then I don't know what is. See you guys next time. Bye bye.